of people from Delhi, Mumbai. I see Bhopal, Kanpur, Devojit from Bhubaneswar, Nikita from Mumbai, Shubhang from Surat. Okay. Anyone dialing in from outside of India? Okay, I see Haryana, Pune, Ahmedabad, Mumbai. Hi, Tanya. Hi, Vedant. Great to see all of you. It's a pleasure to be hosting you all. I'm going to do quick introductions now. Okay, I see someone from Ghana. Hi, Andrea. Thank you for dialing in from Ghana. Great to have you over here. My name is Sanjay Dhingra. I'm one of the co-founders at Seed Global Education. We are a higher education firm which works at the cross section of connecting candidates with top tier B schools, top tier universities, and of course, hosting such knowledge sessions as well. My background has been in admissions for B schools. I've worked with the Indian School of Business, ISB, at the Hyderabad campus. I've also worked with a Canadian business school called the Schulich School of Business and been in the industry for the past decade. Today's panel is very interesting. I have three very knowledgeable, three experts on this panel. Let me introduce them one by one. So I have Anjali who's a senior product manager at GMAT. Those of you who don't know this, GMAT is the maker of the GMAT test. So they are the makers of the GMAT test as such. They, of course, run a lot of other tests as well. Now, NMAT in India is also owned by GMAT. So GMAT also runs the NMAT. And of course, there are some other tests and services as well. I have Amit, who's the quant head at Jambori. Those of you, I'm sure a lot of you in India would have seen Jambori centers across the country. Jambori is a very prestigious test prep in the GMAT space. Amit has been in the test prep industry for the past 2 decades and has coached over multiple thousand students. And same with Arun. So Arun is the CEO and founder at Crackverbal. They are Bangalore headquartered, had centers over there, but now I understand Arun, you're completely online and digital. And over his 2 decades in the industry, he's coached multiple thousands of students as well on their GMAT prep. So we are going to speak to all three of them briefly. But before I start that, we want to get a better understanding of the audience. And that's why I'm going to run our polls for the evening now. So those of you who are able to hear me and are in this session right now, you'll be able to see the polls on your screen right now. The first question is, have you already taken the CAT, GMAT, or GRE before? Basically, the idea is to get whether have you already attempted or started preparing for any of the management aptitude tests. So if you have already taken one of the tests, choose the first option that you have already taken one of the tests. If you're prepping for an attempt in 2023, that's the second option. Or if you're new to this whole experience, new to this journey, that's the third option, that you're new to management aptitude test and you're really looking forward to this session in that case. So let us know where you are in your management aptitude test journey. The second question in the polls that you see is, what is your perception of the GMAT? Do you think is it a hard test to crack? If yes, that's what you think, that it's hard test to crack, then it's the first option. Certainly the rules of the game are different. If you think, no, it's not, it shouldn't be that difficult, it should be fairly easy, then that's the second option. If you're not sure, you've just started prepping, then that's the third option. If you are like confident, hey, whatever happens, I'm going to crack this test, I'm going to give it my best, then that's the third option, that you don't care, hard or not, you will put in the effort and you will crack it. I'm going to wait for another 5 or 10 seconds for everyone to respond while the poll goes on. I will talk about one brief thing over here, that I had a 740 on the GMAT when I was applying to B schools, and I would personally say it's a piece of cake, but perceptions differ. So let us know what your perceptions are of this test. I just wanted to brag for a second about my score. So I did that. I did the plug. Great. I'm going to end the poll now. I have around 163 responses for both the polls. There are 280 plus people in this room. The responses are going up. But I'm going to end the poll in the next 5 seconds. So if you haven't responded, please do so. And then I'll share the results as well. All right. With that, I've ended the poll. And I'm going to share the results for the audience to see. So around 13% of the audience in this room who responded have already taken the test. 30% are prepping for an attempt in 2023. So they're very close to that. Around 56% are new to this journey. So possibly you would get some really great insights for that as well in this session. About perceptions on how difficult the test is, 22% think that it's a difficult test. The rules of the game are different. 4% think it's easy. I agree with you personally. 49% say that they haven't yet started prepping, so they don't know. And 26% don't care. They're the hard workers. They'll pull it off, whatever the case may be. I really like you guys. That's the spirit to go with. With that, let me kickstart this session. About the flow of this session, what I'm going to do is I'm going to first invite Anjali to tell you more about the GMAT test. As I said, Anjali is from GMAT, the makers of the test. So it's it's the very genuine advice or insights that you can get about the test from Anjali now. So I'm going to invite her to tell us more about the GMAT over the next 10-15 minutes. Post that, I'm going to go to Amit, where we'll discuss the quant section of the GMAT and talk about certain approaches, tactics that you can use to ace the quant section. Then I'm going to go to Arun from Crack Verbal, and we are going to talk about how you can crack the verbal section of the GMAT and the ace it. With that, over to you, Anjali. I'm going to hand over the audience to you now.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you for that introduction. I will go ahead and share my screen now. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, just checking the chat. Awesome. All right, then I'm going to go ahead and get started. So thank you everyone for attending. I'm Anjali McKinsey, Senior Product Manager at GMAT. I'm a Senior Product Manager for the GMAT exam specifically. So been at GMAT for about 7 years now and started off on our GMAT prep team. So started, in the world of prep and test prep and all that good stuff, and then moved over to work on the exam itself. So today I'm going to give you a quick overview of, here we go. All right. A quick overview of the GMAT exam, and then talk a little bit about some myths and common questions we receive about the GMAT exam. So to start, in the poll, since many of you are new to the GMAT, new to testing in general, and haven't started prepping, I did just want to provide a quick overview of the GMAT exam. So you may or may not know, we do offer the exam delivered via a test center or delivered online. So both options are available to all candidates globally. And just going through a bit of the exam specifics. So in terms of the content and structure, the GMAT exam contains 4 sections to be completed in the order of your choosing. So candidates have the option to choose which order they want to do these 4 sections in: quantitative reasoning, verbal reasoning, integrated reasoning, and analytical writing assessment. Many candidates choose certain orders as opposed to others based on their strengths, or if they want to get a certain section out of the way quickly, then they try to do that section first so they can move on to some of their stronger sections. So it's really up to the candidate and based on their preference. The length is 3 hours and 7 minutes, not including the 2 optional breaks, which I'll mention a bit later. The registration is available through mba.com. So that is our main website to access all information about the GMAT exam. The number of attempts, so candidates can take the exam up to 5 times in a 12-month period and up to 8 times in a lifetime. And this attempt limit applies across channels. So you can take all attempts online, all attempts at a test center, or a combination of both of those. The score scale is 200 to 800 for the total score, and then 6 to 51 for quant and verbal, 1 to 8 for IR, and 0 to 6 for AWA. And there's more information about the scoring, of course, on the website. Appointments are available 7 days a week, and depending on the channel, the hours vary. So for test center, of course, it's dependent on the test center hours. So some test centers are open certain hours of the day. Some might have longer hours or extended hours. So you just would have to check the test center information, which again is available, and you can check that through mba.com. Online, of course, is available around the clock in 30-minute increments. So, if you're the type of candidate that wants to test really, really late at night or really early in the morning, you're an early bird, the online option may be a better option just to provide more flexibility in the timing. The exam experience is the same, except for the fact that one is, of course, at a physical test center and one is online. The only major difference, so both have the choice of section orders, both have 2 optional 8-minute breaks, which I mentioned earlier. So those breaks come at certain points in the exam, and you have the option to take the break or skip the break. The one slight difference is the material options you have for scratch work. So at a test center, the test administrator will provide a laminated booklet for scratch work, as well as 2 dry erase markers, or up to 2 dry erase markers, 1 at a time. And then online, candidates have the option to bring their own physical whiteboard, as well as the option to use an online whiteboard. So you could do both. You could do either for the online exam, but if you do want to do a physical whiteboard, you have to procure that whiteboard on your own. So moving on, the exam cost is $250 USD to $285 USD globally. So this does vary by region. Specifically in India, the cost is $275 USD, including taxes. The score validity period is 5 years. So when you take a GMAT exam, the score is valid for 5 years after the date of the exam, which means you can, use the score up to 5 years. This really gives flexibility to a lot of candidates who maybe want to take the exam early when they're still in undergrad, for example, because that validity period is quite long. So when they feel like they are in kind of the process of studying already for school exams or university exams, it may feel more comfortable or easier to take the exam. Whereas others may decide, they want to go start working and then get some work experience, then take the exam. And still that score is valid for 5 years. So that's really beneficial in terms of having that available and opening up options. So score access for Test Center and online, there is an unofficial score preview after the exam. So it's right there on the screen. You can see your unofficial score immediately. And then official scores typically take 7 business days to arrive into your MBA.com account. And sometimes they may take up to 20 business days, but that's sort of on occasion when the score sort of needs further processing time. So there is slight difference between the score review options. So at a test center, candidates have the option to accept or cancel a score at the test center right there after the exam. So once the unofficial score is displayed on screen, a candidate has an option to accept that score or cancel that score. And the reason for this is because at the test center, candidates have to select the programs they want to send their score to, up to 5 programs up front. So at the test center, you get to select your 5 programs that you want to send your score to at the beginning of the exam. And then if you see your unofficial score at the end, you can choose to cancel that score, and then the score will not get sent to those 5 programs you selected at the beginning of the exam. Or you can accept your score, and then your score will be sent to those 5 schools you selected at the beginning of the exam, or the 5 programs you selected at the beginning of the exam. So it's really dependent on how you feel about the score and whether you want to accept it at that very moment or cancel it at that moment. There is options to then, if you cancel it at the test center, there's an option to reinstate the score after the exam. And then if you accept the score at the test center, there is an option within 72 hours to cancel that score. So you do have some wiggle room in terms of kind of changing your decision. If you felt like you made the wrong decision at the test center, you have a little bit of time to to cancel that score, or you have a bit more time to reinstate that score if you canceled it at the test center. With the online exam, the score review flexibility is a bit more seamless. Candidates have more control and more flexibility and kind of what they can do with their score in the moment. So candidates do not have to accept or cancel the score for the online exam. There's no selection of programs up front for the online exam. So really what happens with the online exam is candidates get to review their official score and then decide which programs they would like to send that score to. So candidates don't have to select any programs up front, like I mentioned. They just get their official score and then decide which programs they want to send it to. And if you don't want to send your score to any programs, then you just don't have to do anything. No action needed. Don't have to cancel the score. Don't have to accept the score. Really up to you if you want to send it or not send it. And if you don't send it, it just stays in your MBA.com account. You can log in and check it out anytime, but it will not be sent to any programs. So just as kind of related is this score reporting piece. So both exams offer up to 5 free score reports. As I mentioned, for Test Center, you have to select those programs up front at the Test Center. But for the online exam, you can select those programs within 48 hours of receiving your official score. So there is that time limit for sending the free score reports, but you do have 48 hours to make that selection once the official score is available. And then for both channels, additional score reports are available for a fee after the exam. So once you use up your 5 free score reports, or once that 48-hour period has expired for online, or once you've accepted or canceled your scores for the Test Center, and that period has ended, then you can purchase additional score reports after the exam. And then schools will receive the score within 8 to 24 hours. So 24 hours at most for exams delivered at a Test Center, and then usually within 8 hours of sending the score request for the exam delivered online. And then just one note here to call out that, the official score is the official score. So candidates should not be sending unofficial scores or any sort of screenshots or printouts to schools or programs. They're not considered valid. I think schools will come back and ask for the official score, even if you try to send the screenshot or printout. So just something to keep in mind. So just touching on some of the product updates. So this is mostly covered in the last couple of slides, but I did want to call out that in 2021 and 2022, we made a bunch of updates. So first was the attempt limits. We focused on combining the attempt limits, so it was sort of simple to understand for our candidates. So whether testing online or at a test center, the attempt limits apply across channels. So 5 in a rolling 12-month period, 8 in a lifetime. And then a reminder that if a candidate doesn't show up to an exam session, that will not count to the attempt limit, but the exam fee will be forfeited. So that's what we call a no-show to the exam. So if you've paid for registration, but just don't show up, don't cancel your exam. So there are options to cancel your exam if you know you're not going to make it. But if you just aren't able to show up the day of or choose to skip the exam the day of, it does not count towards your attempt limit, but it will, the exam fee will be forfeited. So score reporting timelines, again, just calling out that they are typically available within 7 business days, but may take up to 20 business days to process in some cases. And candidates should not be sending unofficial score reports to programs. So the online exam score sending, this was an update we did make in late 2021, early 2022, where candidates can send up to 5 free score reports within 48 hours for the online exam. So we did account for the 5 free score reports to align with our test center score report functionality and feature. And then for online, it's just a 48-hour period. And then additional score reports can be sent for a fee. And then, of course, we developed some additional candidate resources in 2022. So there is an updated system requirements page, and this is specifically for the exam delivered online. There's a ton of stuff to just keep in mind when taking the exam online, and that's really related to setting up your environment, right? So making sure there's a good internet connection, making sure no one else is in the room or the space that you'll be testing in, making sure there's, your desk is clear of kind of electronic devices other than the computer and notes and that sort of thing. So it's just, we've put together a really handy checklist to make sure candidates can go through that easily and kind of check everything off that they need to get done before taking an exam delivered online. And then candidates, just a reminder, and this is once you're decided you want to take the test online, that there's a secured browser that needs to be downloaded. So that's all part of the checklist, all part of the system requirements page. So this goes hand in hand for what you would need to do before exam day if testing online. So quickly, I'm going to just get into some common myths and questions about the GMAT exam. So one myth we hear often is, I must get a high score. And the fact is that admissions officers evaluate the entire application, making a decision based on the whole. So it's based off of many factors. The GMAT exam can help candidates stand out in the admissions process and compensate for weaker areas, but that does not mean that you absolutely need, a 760, 770. I think there are many schools and many programs that accept scores that are not in that high range, that 750, 60, 70 range. And even any score can help you stand out and compensate for any other weak areas that may be on the application. Just studying for the GMAT exam will help candidates prepare for business school. So, while you may think you're studying specifically for the exam, the studying piece of it is really effective also for just performing well in business school overall. And a GMAT score, regardless of the actual score, right? So again, it doesn't have to be 760, 770. A GMAT score opens doors to programs in general, as well as scholarships. So that's a key point that I think a lot of people may not be aware of, is that often scholarships for business school do require you to have taken the GMAT exam and have a GMAT score available to put on the scholarship application. So it's a great opportunity to find scholarships by just taking the GMAT exam, regardless of score. A myth is that my verbal score is lower than my quant score, so I must be performing worse on verbal. So often, if you look at the scores, both scores are on a scale of 0 to 51, or sorry, 6 to 51. So candidates may feel like if they got, for example, a 25 on verbal and a 30 on quant, they're much lower on verbal. And the fact is that GMAT quant and verbal section scores are not comparable. So do not take a look at that 6 to 51 section score and try to compare it across sections. They are, they are not scores that should be compared on that scale specifically, but candidates should use the percentile rankings on MBA.com to compare their performance between sections. So the percentile rankings will help you understand how you rank among other candidates. And we take candidates from the past 3 years and see where you are in comparison to those candidates, and also see sort of how you rank individually on each section. So you can see, oh, I'm in the 75th percentile for verbal. And then maybe you're also on the 75th percentile for quant, even though your section score looks different. So it's important to take a look at the percentile rankings. And then you can use that information on percentile ranking. It provides an additional data point to help you determine where you need to focus your prep. So again, if you're 75 on percentile on both, you're kind of equivalent in both sections. If you're 50th percentile on quant, 75th percentile on verbal, then you could see that, maybe quant is the area you need to focus on a bit more. So myth, the online exam is easier or harder than the test center exam. So there's really no difference in structure, scoring, or difficulty of the exam. So it's a computer adaptive test, which means it adjusts to the individual's ability. There's so many reasons why a candidate might perceive a question or a section to be difficult or easy. So that's very, very subjective. And it might depend on the level of preparation, time management, level of anxiety, just general strengths and weaknesses in terms of, how you feel about certain sections, or how you feel about taking it in person or taking it online. So it really depends on what candidates feel and where they're more comfortable. So some candidates might feel really, really anxious taking it at home and feel like there's noise. So those candidates might feel like taking it online is harder, but in reality, it's kind of just the environment that the candidate is in. And then a couple of questions. So what should I do if I'm running out of time? So it is better to guess than to omit the answer completely. So it's better to complete the section. There is a penalty for not finishing an exam or having unanswered questions in the specific section. So just keep in mind that it's better to just make an intelligent guess and try to eliminate choices. And then of course, focus on practice. And I'm sure we'll hear more about the prep strategies. And then would you recommend taking a test center online or at a test center, taking the exam online or at a test center? So again, it's up to candidate preference. We really do not guide candidates on one or the other. So like I said, some might not have a distraction-free or quiet space at home and prefer the structure of a test center environment. Some people might want the flexibility in exam timing or appointment timings and might prefer to take it online to be able to test really, really late at night when it's better option for them. So it really certainly depends on candidate preference. And finally, I'll just close with the GMAT does help candidates stand out. So taking the GMAT continues to serve as a demonstration of commitment. We have heard this from schools over and over that it really does serve as a demonstration of commitment, of readiness, willingness to study and perform and work towards a business school degree. GMAT exam scores serve as a strong predictor of academic success, so correlating with business school GPA. So we've done a lot of validity research and predictive analysis research to see that the GMAT exam is a predictor of academic success in business school. The IR section specifically helps differentiate candidates in both admissions and hiring. A GMAT score opens the doors to scholarships as well as more programs. And then it is the most widely used exam for business degree programs. So over 2,400 schools and 7,700 programs that do accept the GMAT exam. And that is all I have.
Great. Thanks, Anjali. This was extremely insightful. I was monitoring the Q&A. There were some relevant questions coming. But we are going to get to the questions very shortly, but I'm going to deep dive into both the sections, the quant and the verbal. So let me now invite Amit from Jambori to tell us more about the quant section of the GMAT and what you can do to ace that section Then we'll go to Arun and talk about the verbal section and then come back to the three of them to take up the questions. With that, over to you, Amit.
Thank you, Sanjay sir. Very warm welcome to all of you. Let me share my screen. Very warm welcome again. Just want to share with you what's the intention of this session. As I was just analyzing what is the attendees list as such, most of you are, some of you, about 13%, if I remember the correct percentage, are the people who have taken the GMAT, who are planning to probably retake it. There's a large group of people who have just started. So my intention is going to be to address all of you so that you find value in what we are going to discuss with you. And what I intend to discuss right now with you is the learnings we have gotten after analyzing GMAT for the 2 decades. And most of the learnings have come in from the GMAC itself, I need to acknowledge them, and from analyzing the official content released by GMAC, that is official guide, and having taken the GMAT a couple of times. So kind of relate with what you guys go through and what are you feeling. So I'll share with that. So as Sanjay sir has pointed out, we will, if you have any questions or queries, right now I'd like you to run through the whole thing. I'll share my viewpoints. And if you have any questions or queries, we'll be open to in a Q&A session. So before we start with the tips of GMAT, I just want to address one thing. Normally, whenever any candidate starts with the GMAT, normally what we focus on is, okay, what is the content area which you need to cover upon? The what part is important. But in the limited time I have, I want to address why we need to do that and how we need to do that. We have a lot of content available online and so forth. Our focus is on why that content needs to be covered and, more importantly, how that content needs to be covered up. So I would request you to look from that perspective. So there are 5 things we intend to cover up. First, we want to take a step back. We want to analyze what is the GMAT test all about? How is it standardized? Why we should prepare whatever we are preparing. Second, we will talk about, we need to have a structured and disciplined approach. We'll talk about that. And then we'll talk about, as I talked about, it's very important to study the relevant content for this test. But the way you study is equally important. And testing and analysis, as you will realize, is one of the most critical part of scoring well. So let me get started. So these are the 5 intentions I intend to deliver in the next 10, 12 to 13 minutes. So I'll cover up a ground and we'll go back to this and we will connect the dots by the end of the session. So let's get started. So first thing which is important is to understand what is this test all about. So I'm sharing with you what GMAC officially says about the test. And it's from the official content available. You can go to mba.com and you'll analyze this. Once you understand what this GMAT test is all about, preparation will become that much convenient and hence can be customized. Number one, we need to understand, they say it's a test which is defined by the skills it measures. So a GMAT, a test is defined by the skills it measures. And the second step is very critical for us. If the content mix were to vary, then the skills being assessed would vary and the reliability will be reduced. As you heard Anjali ma'am say that it's valid for 5 years. So it's a very standardized test. In my history, if I analyze, it's one of the most standardized tests I have come across, or practically you would have come across. So the content mix, you need to first understand it's a standardized paper. It's not that any and everything regarding maths, if I'll be specifically focusing on the maths part, anything and everything on the maths part can be asked. It's testing on a certain skill sets. You need to be focusing only on those skill sets to master it. So the limited focused effort is going to be important. And they also say every test taker will see same number of questions on each type. So basically problem solving, and there are 2 types formats of the questions in the math section, problem solving and data sufficiency. All the test takers globally, whether you take it in Delhi or Mumbai or Chicago, wherever you take it, each test taker will have the exact same number of questions of each format. And further within areas also, to a certain extent, they're very much limited. For example, geometry, algebra, and all that stuff. So the point I want you to all take a step back and analyze that it's a standardized test. So before you even start studying, that it's a standardized test. It's not random. So your preparation, as it's a standardized test, your preparation also has to be structured and disciplined. So the content, what part of it, what content should you study? You should be very careful in selecting the content which is testing, which will help you prepare for GMAT. That's number one. Second, once you have understood it's a standardized nature, then each of us needs to evaluate what scores will work for us. Now, each of us is individual, each of us has different work experience. If each of us has a different experiences of life and each is expecting a different school to go to, it's important that you analyze what scores you are looking forward for, what will work for you based on the profile. Specifically, if I take an example, these are just a couple of examples. So you need to analyze what are your strengths, whether your quantitative section is your strength or a verbal is a strength. If I may take an example of us, let's say 730. If your verbal is a strength, if it's a 42, then a lesser quant will also work. Wherever if it's your quant is a strength, then correspondingly you need a verbal score. These are just few of the permutations combinations. There is a lot of permutations combinations. So my point is, the point I want to bring across is, once you understand it's a standardized test, before you start prepping, you need to analyze what are your strengths and weaknesses so that you can customize your preparation accordingly. You should be very clear based on whatever score you're targeting, okay, how much you need to push up on verbal and similarly how much you need to push up on maths. Once you have evaluated that, then you need to have a structured and disciplined prep. We believe, the different thought process on it. I'm just sharing my viewpoint. We believe there are 3 phases of a preparation a person should go through. Number one, a person should learn the concept. A person may come from a maths background, may not come from a maths background, but a person needs to revise the concepts in the context in which they will be tested, that is in the GMAT. So first is the learn phase. You quickly revise the concepts and then you practice them. You get them in the blood, if I may say. And then comes testing. So all the 3 phases are critically important. And what is the intention of these 3 phases is, the first phase is to build the concept. If you're comfortable with the maths, then you'll be able to do this phase 1 faster, and hence we are expecting a better score also. So the first phase is to build the concept. Next is to master the concept. And third is the time management. So whenever you're starting your preparation, be very customized, be very disciplined in the time you'll allocate to all the 3 phases. Now, what I've come across is when people start for GMAT, initially the enthusiasm is very high. So we spend too much time on building the basics. But you need to understand that it's a test. You need to also manage time well. You need to master the concept and manage time well. So there's a lot of testing required at the end phases also. So make sure you structure your whatever time you have, whether it's 3 months, 4 months, whatever time you have for the test, you structure it very systematically. So number one, it's a standardized test. Number two, you need to analyze your strengths and weaknesses so that you can focus on whether you want to focus on quantitative section or the verbal section. And then once you analyze, okay, how much you want to focus on maths and verbal, then you need to have a structured, disciplined prep on this. Now, this is about the broad structure. Now let's talk about what you need to do. Or how do we prep on a maths question? Now, typically, if you analyze any maths question, I'll keep it as simple as I can because most of you are starting your prep. Typically, and actually, as a matter of fact, GMAT is a simple test. Yes, but you need to prep it. You need to work on the skills that a GMAT will be testing you on. So typically, if you take a step back, you'll analyze there are to address any maths questions, you need to have basic concepts in place. You need to understand the question well, and then you need to have an approach to solve it. All the 3 have a different meaning in the context of GMAT. The basic concept, a lot of books are available where you can focus on the basic concept. We strongly believe official content is the most reliable content and one of the best contents available to still prep on GMAT. So there's a theory part given, you can go through that theory, or if you have another content, you can go through the basic concepts. But pick up the revision of the basic concept should be done. You should pick up the content which is designed for GMAT. That's my only request. Which content you pick up, that I leave it to you. but pick up the content which is designed for GMAT, because GMAT is slightly a different test altogether. And the skills it's testing is slightly different from normally what you would have normally encountered. So having done the basics, the second most critical thing actually, or I would say the most critical thing among all the three, is understanding the question. Now, what I've noticed is, if normally anyone makes a mistake in the maths question or quantitative, it's typically normally because a person misses on really understanding what the question is asking. So understanding of a question is normally is the skill. If you develop, it seems very obvious that, come on, I need to understand the question to address it, but it's the underrated skill. You need to build up on that. Make sure you work on understanding of a question, because the question will vary, the skill will remain the same. So your understanding of what is he asking is important. And then the approach you follow. So let me focus on the most important aspect, that's the understanding of a question. Now, GMAT will have all levels of questions. You'll have some very easy questions, some medium level questions, and some harder level questions based on what's your comfort level, right? Let me ask you a simple question. If I ask you, what's the value for this? Could you write on a chat? Pretty basic idea. I'm sure most of us will mark it right because we are in the final stages. Okay. Whatever you have written, what I want you to evaluate is, please notice, this is, I'm sure we all understand, this is different from this. The way you read an expression is going to be very, very, very important. You must have heard about, in GMAT, in Indian context, we talk about, I think most of you are from India, but some are from abroad. So whichever nationality you are from, whichever education system you have followed, while you're working for GMAT, you should do what GMAC follows in GMAT. That is, the way the expression we solve is through PEMDAS. That is parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction. Now, the point I wanted to emphasize was the first bit, second bit is -2 multiplied by -2, which will make it 4. We all understand. The first part is -1 multiplied by 2 raised to power 4. The point I wanted to emphasize was, yes, you need to have these concepts which are tested. So there are two ways to address this question. Number one, you know the concept that, okay, there's a particular order we need to follow, number one. Second, even if you just attentively focus on a question, in half of the mistakes can be avoided if you just focus on what is he asking. Because I strongly believe the moment you start focusing, you'll understand that the first part, that is -2 raised to power 2, is different from -2 bracket and then raised to power 2. So once you start focusing on what is he asking, that is the key required. I've picked up a very simple example. There are thousands of examples we can pick up, which are in official guide and so forth, where you'll understand that the key element you need to build up on is reading the question carefully, or a very focused reading is required. Now, let me pick up another example. The approach. Remember one thing, the way we have analyzed, the way we think in GMAT is, your approach has to be concept specific. It can't be question specific, because there are a lot of questions may vary, but you have to build up the approach which will help you work the concept easily, or attempt the question in a paper in a quicker fashion. Another thing which you need to build upon is, when you start approaching a question, you need to get one thing very clearly, as far at least what I would go by. Your GMAT in maths is not a formula focused paper or a calculation focused paper. Yes, there are certain formulas you need to know, but there are a bit of a calculations you need to know. But what GMAT is testing you is not on a formulas or calculations. Its focus is testing you on your reasoning skills. And why is that? Let me again go a step back. Your approach has to be reasoning focused. Now, why do we say it has to be reasoning focused? Again, if you analyze any maths question, you will analyze in certain questions, you can apply the basic concepts. You can apply in certain questions the formula and get them addressed. In some, common sense also works. In certain questions, some people apply short tricks and shortcuts also, tricks and shortcuts. But GMAC says they are testing you on higher order reasoning skills. Now, this is what GMAC officially says, that we are testing you on higher order reasoning skills. So hence, it's very important for us to focus on the reasoning part of it. So hence, it's not any approach when you are preparing for a, whenever you practice any content, your focus has to be on understanding the reasoning behind the concept or the question which you're solving. Getting an answer should, in my strong view, should not be the end goal. It should be to understand what is the reasoning behind that question. I'll give you one simple concept, which I'm pretty sure everyone is comfortable. I'll pick up a concept of absolute value, talk a minute about what do we mean by basics of it, what do we mean by reasoning of it, what do we mean by meaning of it, and then say, where is it used? So let's talk about it. Now we know that this expression x written in the parallel bars is what we refer to as an absolute value of x, correct? Now, if I simply ask you, or actually we know it, so I can just share it with you. We know the absolute value of 5 is also 5. We know the absolute value of -5 is also 5. And frankly, we also, I'm assuming most of us also know why is it. Now, what you need to understand for GMAT is the why part of it. Okay, why the absolute value is always positive? Because the absolute value of, if you read any official content or any book which is designed for GMAT, you will understand, every book would have this definition, that absolute value signifies the distance of that point from 0 on a number line. So absolute value of 5 would also be 5. Absolute value of -5 would also be 5, because 5 and -5 both are equidistant from 0 and they're at a distance of 5 units. Let me take a step more. Let's go a step deeper. Now, if I ask you what's an if I give an expression, absolute value of x is 5, and if I ask you what are the possible values of x which will satisfy this expression? Again, I'm pretty sure everyone understands. The values of x which will satisfy this expression is plus minus 5. But similarly, let me take another example. If I ask you, absolute value of x is greater than 5, and if I ask you what are the values of x which will satisfy this expression? And normally when I've encountered to the people understand we are looking forward for the values of x. How do you read it is whose distance from 0 is greater than 5. The way you read this expression for GMAT would be if you read it like this. We are looking forward for the values of x whose distance from 0 is greater than 5. So which are the values whose distance from 0 is greater than 5? X can be on the right-hand side greater than 5, or it can be on the left-hand side less than -5. Give me a minute. I'll show you why and how, why do we need to think in these terms and how does it help us. So absolute value of x greater than 5 means I'm looking forward for the values of x whose distance from 0 is greater than 5. So all the values more than 5 on the right-hand side, as well as on the left-hand side of -5, would be the values of x which will satisfy this expression. Similarly, let me take one more example. If I say something like this, how do you read this expression? I'll spare 2 seconds for you to analyze how do you read this expression. We all know how to solve it, but the way I would request you to read this expression is I'm looking forward for the values of x whose distance from 10 is greater than 3. So what are the values whose distance from 10 is greater than 3? It can be on more than 3 on the right-hand side. Similarly, more than 3 on the left-hand side. So it can be more than 13 or less than 7. So that's the way you infer these expressions. Why are they important? Because when numerals are given, there will not be a challenge at all. You can analyze it. But when variables are concerned, that's where the reasoning comes into picture. So if an expression is given like this, the way we read this expression on a GMAT would be, we are looking forward for the values of x whose distance, we are looking forward for the values of x and y which are equidistant from A. It means the distance of x from A is equal to the distance of x from y from A. So x and y both are equidistant from A. Now, this is the analysis you will need on the GMAT. Why do we need this? If you analyze this question, this is an official guide question. In the last 10 editions of official guide, you will come across this question. This is where you need that thought process. So on the face of it, when we said mod signifies the distance, it may seem, okay, I can anyway solve it. So why should I get into the y part of it? But when you will analyze the skills which you have initially built up will help you address the tougher level questions. So when you are practicing from the day one to the day end, make sure you analyze the reasoning of a question. Sometimes the question seems simple and we just plug in the values and get an answer. But in a tougher question, that will become a challenge. So my request to all the test takers right now who are listening, and thanks for listening, is make sure whenever you're prepping up, whatever content you're prepping up, first of all, do the content which is relevant for your test. Second, make sure you focus on the why part of it. You understand the reasoning you are following. That is very super critically important for our GMAT. So I'll consolidate my points by saying, similarly, all these reasonings will help you build up on the time management. And once you have built up on the time management, you will be able to address the testing and analysis will become important for you, because testing is important to understand time management. Unless you have built the skills to address a question in a minute, it will become difficult. So bottom line, consolidating all the points, you need to understand it's a standardized test. Hence, you need to have a structured discipline prep. You analyze how much time you have, you structure it. You need to divide it into 3 phases of your preparation wherever you are. And then you need to pick up the content which is designed for GMAT. And when you practice the content, make sure you study the why part of it, the process, the reasoning part is important. And make sure once you have studied, you test it out. Unless you have tested it out, unless you have seen, can you manage in the given time? It's important to build up our mind, build up our body clock so that we can manage the section in the allocated time. So all the 3 things, all these 5 things are important. So in my view, just have a disciplined prep. What is important, but most important is why part of it. And make sure you work on testing. That was my bit, sir. I'm done with this. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Amit. To the audience, don't go anywhere. You got some amazing tips about the quant section from Amit. Let's hear about the amazing tips for the verbal section from Arun. With that, over to you, Arun.
Thank you, and a very good afternoon, very good evening, wherever you're joining us from. So I'm going to be, just going through a question. So I have a question to start with, and then maybe we can segue into what I have in store. Yeah. So I think the question that you need to ask, you have heard about what the GMAT is, you have heard about the GMAT quant. I'm very happy because whatever Amit said in terms of the larger macro level things, I completely am, I agree with that, very aligned. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make you think. I'm going to pause for a quick 5 seconds, 10 seconds, where I would like you to think, what is it that it's really testing you on? Now, the way we look at it is GMAT is a test which is going to help you get into a management institute, correct? An MBA or a master's program. Now, when you go to such a program, what is it that they are preparing you for? Well, they are preparing you for your future recruiters, for companies that will employ you. So what really happens in the GMAT is a process that starts at the very end, which is what do people want in successful product managers? What do they want in great investment bankers? What do they want in the top-notch McKinsey, Bain, BCGs of the world? What is the skill they really require? Fundamentally, we can boil down to 3 essential skills that you require to succeed in such a world. So what is that first thing that you need to succeed in that world? You would be required to read a large volume of information, data, paper, research. Some analysts saying this, some other database coming in, and you have to make sense of all the news and information around you, right? That's going to be a very, very key skill that is going to help you differentiate yourself from your peers in 2023 and beyond, right? So if you are still in college or a recent graduate, what I'm telling you is about GMAT, but it's also not about GMAT. In the sense, this is something that you will have to create as a skill. Does GMAT test you on that? Sure. GMAT tests you to see if you have those, skills. How do they do that? They give you a section called reading comprehension. which will have 4 passages, about 3 to 4 questions per passage. And what it will do is it will test your ability to understand the crux of what the passage is and to be able to answer very specific questions from the passage. Now, if I were to take the case of what I said, if you are a management consultant, you are reading a lot of things, okay? But when your client asks you a question, you should know from the data that you have already read, what is the correct answer? What can I infer from this? What is the main point of this? What of the following factors are included in what is being said? So the information is always in front of you. Remember, in fact, reading comprehension is one of those question types where the answer is first, then you get the questions. Think about it, right? Reading comprehension, you get the answer because the whole passage is in front of you. How are you able to interpret? How are you able to read between the lines, right? Those are the skills that are tested. If you approach it with a sense of enjoyment, what you will realize is you will actually end up developing a life skill. So you may study for the reading comprehension for the GMAT, but I have heard a lot of my students tell me after they have actually gone to an MBA is, Arun, when we had the case study, like the next day, if you go to a top management school, let's say you go to Harvard, right? If you go to Harvard, they're going to give you a case study. It will be 50 to 60 pages where you have to read about a company, read about a particular strategy, and then in the next, the next class, you will be discussing it along with your classmates. So reading comprehension is a skill that you any which ways need to develop. So my submission to you, therefore, is approach this section as something that you will learn for life. Now, you have read a lot, you know what information to go to, but would you go to your manager, would you go to your boss and say, this is, the information I read? Perhaps not. I told you about the case study, right? So one of the things about the case study method is you are also expected to argue your point in the class. In fact, there is some marks for it. It is called CP or class participation. If you go to IIMs, you go to any management school, they typically will have a case study based approach. And if they do, they will ask you to argue in the class. Someone is saying something. You have to look at, okay, what are the conjectures that I can draw from this, right? What are the inferences that I can make? What are the assumptions being made? Now, all of these are words that might be familiar to you, but that is where the second section comes, which is critical reasoning. And if you ask me, critical reasoning, very interesting, right? You will be given a small case and you will be asked a question about it. Again, what is it testing? It's testing to see whether you are able to apply logic, right? If reading comprehension is about your ability to skim and scan information, this is your ability to read and apply logic. In fact, the other thing that I would like to tell is, I have again had a lot of students who have told me that once you learn the formula, okay, of logic, and that's the best way to put it, there is a formula for logic. If someone is arguing in a very, if you look at a lawyer, right, if they are arguing in a very, sometimes you hear someone like a good lawyer making a case and you're like, boss, this guy has got a point. How he broke down the opponent's point. Trust me, there is a logic, there is a formula to it, and that is what critical reasoning will test you on. Again, a very key skill. But if you ask me, there is something that has to be, kind of putting all of it together, which is how do you express yourself? So if you are in a consulting firm, you are expected to go in front of the client and you are expected to put your points in a very clear and crisp manner, which is, of course, grammatically conforms to the rules of grammar, right? That's what they are expecting. Even in B school, when you are writing your paper, you would be expected to write in a particular way. And that is what sentence correction really teaches you. Sentence correction teaches you how to accurately write without any errors. Okay? And again, the constructs of grammar, like, Amit mentioned about formulas, that too is the basic requirement, right? Like you need to know some basic formulas, right? If you don't know what is length and breadth, right? Area of rectangle, you will never be able to compute. Similarly, in sentence correction, there are some basic rules that you need to know. You need to know that there is a subject and a verb, and they have to be, in agreement. For example, if I say the boys are playing the game, the boy is playing the game. But if I were to say a group of boys are playing or is playing, the answer is playing, because now your subject changes, your subject becomes a group, right? So yes, grammar is required, but a lot of sentence correction is about logic as well, right? And I'll be giving you a small example today of how GMAT actually is a test of logic more than the constructs, because if you understand and appreciate what the test is, studying for the test becomes easy, right? So with that, let me kind of go to this. Yeah, so just to kind of summarize, you have 36 questions that you need to solve in about 65 minutes, right? That is the timing that we have. And what it basically means is I'm giving you 3 tables. Don't get overwhelmed, okay? My intent is not to give you a lot of data, but look at the first table. It is your total score. If you are a genius and you get all the questions right, you will get a perfect 800 on the GMAT, okay, which corresponds to the 99th percentile. But here is the thing about GMAT, and I'm looking at the leftmost table right now. You have 800 all the way to 580. I couldn't publish the whole thing, so I'm just giving you the top, 50%. Now you look at it all the way till 760, you have a 99th percentile. Then you go below the 99th percentile. That is when you get into 98, 97, and so on. And just to make sure that all of us are on the same page, percentile means the number of people who are below you, correct? So in the case of CAT, you might have heard 100 percentile. Statistically, it doesn't make sense. It is 99 point something. They just round it off to 100. On the GMAT, you have the maximum as 99. So the first question to ask is, I saw that most of you had said that GMAT is not an easy test. I tell you, it's a very easy test for someone who wants to score 200 or 300, right? Or 240. Because those kind of scores, you should be able to get with a lot of mistakes also, right? What is hard is to get a high score. And in order to get a high score on the left column, you need a high score on your verbal and quant scores. Now, again, going back to one of the things that Anjali had mentioned, which is do not equate, do not compare quant and verbal. Look at what happens in quant. By the time you get to a 45, your score goes to the 53rd percentile. Means half the people taking GMAT almost are above you, half of them are below you. You are somewhere in the middle. But the same 45 in verbal will give you the 99th percentile, which means you will be in the top 1%. And remember, GMAT, unlike CAT, includes the test-taking population of the United States and England, English-speaking countries in short, right? So make sure that you have an idea of how much your score is going to be. So as I said, not everyone needs to score a 760. If you are aiming for a particular score where, a 550 or a 600 is a requirement, then be very clear what percentile you are gunning for, okay? The test is easy or hard depending on whether you are able to go above your expectation or not, correct? Everything is about expectation. If you expect to get 760, then even 740 will be disappointing for you, right? But please keep a number, very important. Now, I'm going to give you a simple example, and here you can maybe put it on chat just to give an example of how GMAT really tests you on. So what I'm going to give is I'm going to give you a sample sentence, and there are 5 answer options. One of the answer option is correct. 4 answer options are wrong. Okay. What I would like you to do is I would like you to look at it and give me what you think is the right answer. And I'm going to just minimize my screen over here because I would not be able to see the chat window. It's kind of, yeah. Wonderful. So we got a lot of answers. So you believe A is the right answer choice, B is the right answer choice. Okay, lot of A's, some B's. Okay. Okay, but I see a C also. Abhishek has put in a C. All right, so we have a couple of C's. Okay, we got a B, A. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to be giving you the answer, okay? And the answer over here is that it is not a test of grammar. See, if I start explaining grammar to you, I'll have to say attack is a noun, fatal is adjective, second is adjective or adverb, right? So it becomes very complicated, but let us use our sense of logic. Okay, and what is logic? What is the meaning of the word fatal attack? Fatal attack means passed away in that heart attack, right? Like she died, correct? Fatal means died, right? Now think about it. When you say second fatal attack, what it means, when we say Second World War, what we mean? We mean there was a First World War. That is why Second World War happened, correct? Similarly, when you have a second fatal attack, it means first fatal attack already happened. But then if first fatal attack happened, that person died. That person cannot have a second fatal attack. But look at answer option C, the correct answer choice, C for Charlie. It says second and fatal attack. Now what happens when I say second and fatal attack, I am decoupling it. I am saying, look, it was the second attack. But which one? The fatal attack. So the word "and" plays a very crucial way, role in how we interpret this question. Okay, and that's my larger submission. I mean, I've been teaching GMAT. I think Amit and I go back a long way. So a lot of what Amit said, I think I resonate. But I just wanted to leave you with some thoughts. Again, this is a lot of 20 years of GMAT. I've been teaching GMAT perhaps before many of you were born, right? So if I were to kind of distill what I've learned, I would probably put it as these points. First is, you need to have undistracted prep time every day, correct? What happens on the GMAT, people end up starting off, but, we live in a world of distraction. Mobile phone is a distraction. Social media is a distraction. Friends are, everything is a distraction, right? And now if you start working, right, there is a even bigger pressure that I have to do that, then how will I find that time? So getting 2 to 3 hours of undistracted time, correct? Very crucial, undistracted, okay? Maybe you find it early in the morning at 5 a.m. Maybe you are someone who wants to do it late at night. Whatever the time is, please pick that time. We have mentioned this earlier, only official questions, okay? There is a good reason why some of the experts, we are telling you, please listen to it. I mean, there is a good reason why I'm telling this, right? Again, Amit had mentioned, so I'm going to cover this, which is, okay, I'm going to give you a statement. I want you to think about it. The more mistakes I make, the smarter I get. My whole intention when I'm solving questions in practice is okay to make mistake, because each mistake, okay, I am okay if you make a mistake once, but you can't make the mistake the second time because you have learned something from that question. End of the day, that is the only thing that we can really get from this whole thing, right? For every question that you are solving, I hope all of you realize none of those questions are going to appear on the actual GMAT. These are all retired questions. Why are we doing retired questions? Because unlike in college, when the same question would appear, right? Here, similar questions would appear. So therefore, it's very important for us to analyze what is the pattern rather than mindlessly solving questions. Again, this has been a point covered. Please go to mba.com and download exam pack, which are the free tests that you can take. Someone had asked this in the Q&A, so I'm going to jump it. On the GMAT, there is a published standard deviation of plus minus 29 points, which means if you take the GMAT on a Monday, you score a 700, you're probably going to get a 730 or a 670, right? So it is that accurate. Okay, it's scarily accurate, I can tell you that much. Okay, and it's a closely guarded secret, right? Which is why GMAT knows how it's done. And yeah, I think a very important thing is to have a particular momentum. Go in with a positive mindset. Don't try to fear the test. When you make mistakes, and you should look at it from a sense of curiosity. What went wrong? How do I have a growth mindset? How do I, if you're going to say I hate maths or I hate verbal, then you're never going to score well. The guys who do very well on the GMAT eventually get to a grade B school and then eventually find success in their career are typically people who have this mindset, right? Which is, I am learning every day and every mistake that I'm making is getting me closer to my goal, right? So with that, I'm going to conclude my part of the session. I just wanted to let you know in case you would like to connect with me. I'm on LinkedIn, or you can also email me. I can probably put it on the chat. And that's what I had. So back to you, Sanjay.
All right. Thanks, Arun. This was extremely insightful. And I want to call back. I know we went a little over time. I hope the audience is still patient and wants to get answers to the questions they have asked in the Q&A window. I want to invite Amit and Anjali to join the panel as well. And let me start jumping into the questions. We have around 16 questions which are unanswered, but I want to take the most upvoted ones and start from there. To the audience, if you like a question, if you find something is really relevant, upvote that question and I'll pick it up as well. So the first question I have is from Sanskriti, who's asking for some YouTube videos of free resources to prepare for the GMAT. I know Amit, Arun, you run a test prep which focuses on this, but any complementary resources that you can recommend to the audience. Anjali, feel free to jump into this as well.
Arun sir, after you.
Yeah, so I think I do have videos on YouTube, so they can search out for the Crack Verbal channel. I think one of the things that I would probably do here is also be very wary of the kind of content that I'm consuming. So one more resource that I might suggest is GMAT Club, which has webinars on various topics, and there are some related content. So GMAT Club and Crack Verbal are two resources I could suggest.
Amit,
Again,
your suggestions?
Similarly, I would say, as Arun sir has pointed out, there are a lot of videos available. Again, as sir has their own set of videos, we have our own set of videos. But all I would suggest is a lot of content is available on GMAT, but just do the content which is relevant, which is designed for GMAT. That's all I would say. Any company which is focused on GMAT, you do the content of that particular company that should do. I won't say one company over the other. All I would say is do the relevant. If a particular organization is into multiple things, I would be conscious. I would avoid that because sometimes the overlap happens. So anyone who's into GMAT, the specifically GMAT set of questions is what I would recommend.
Anjali, I understand GMAT has some complementary mock tests as well. So the first two mocks are complementary.
Yes, that's correct. So GMAT offers a free starter kit and 2 free practice exams. So the starter kit, I believe, has a set, I think maybe 90 practice questions, as well as some general content about the sections, just to read up on, to understand the sections, as well as 2 full free practice exams that do leverage actual test questions from previous exams. So it's a great resource, completely free, available for anyone who signs up for an mba.com account. So you just need your email and password to sign up.
The free practice tests are a great resource to get started. So those of you who are looking to get on this journey, take the first free practice test, tells you where you are in your preparation, what your current level is, and possibly you can plan your further steps from there. So great. Thank you for that answer to all of you. Let me take up the next question. Okay, so this is not something, I'm not sure if it's relevant. Hityasha, your question is which exam to give first, GMAT or IELTS? They're very different tests. They test 2 different things completely. So I don't think there's a correlation in that. look at the program that you're looking to apply to, and take a call what tests they need. Would that be fair, Amit, Arun?
Yeah, I'll go with that.
Yeah,
Okay.
typically it could be a either or scenario. So where they require only IELTS, not GMAT, or only GMAT IELTS. So I think looking at the list of schools would help. You're on mute, Sanjay.
Sorry. So I remember there was this one question by Abdullah on the average preparation time a person should invest in preparing for the GMAT. Amit, I see you have answered that in the Q&A chat, but Arun, your response to this, what is the recommended average time for preparation?
I think the two factors are where am I and where do I need to go? I think these are two important things. Am I at a 580 wanting to go to 620 is a very different answer than I am at 600 wanting to go to 720. So I think understanding where they are in the journey and maybe at that point talking to an expert or someone who understands would be a good this, because your journey from a 400 to 500 to 550 will look very different than your journey from 550 to 650. So the time period depends on that. I hate to give generic answers. I would love to give a magic number, 37 days, right? But unfortunately, it's not true.
Yeah.
Fair. Anjali, I remember GMAT used to track the average amount of time which candidates have put into the preparation. Do you have that available?
Yeah, we do have that data, and I do think it does correlate with some of the score ranges that we've seen, right? So I think we've seen both, we've taken a look by region as well as by score ranges, and we do see that in South Asia, East Asia, we see a higher number of hours in terms of preparation time. I think, you know, I don't have the exact numbers on hand, I'd have to look it up, but I think it's like higher than 60, 70. And then we do see when you correlate to the scores around 7 to 750, for example, or 7 to 800, we do see numbers up in the 75 to 100 range in terms of hours of study. But I think, you know, as Amit and Arun have mentioned, it really just depends on your level, current level of ability, your skills, your strengths, you know, your time, your available time to prepare and stuff like that. So it also kind of depends on if you intend to retake the exam, right? So some candidates may choose to not prepare or not have the time to prepare as much for their first attempt and then plan out their sort of time and schedule to take more time to prep and take it again. So that's another option as well.
Fair. And Anjali, is there any negative marking on the GMAT?
So there is, if you, as I mentioned, if you omit questions at the end of a section, there is a penalty for omitting questions. So it's definitely better to guess, just make an educated best guess as you can. And then there is a penalty for answering a question wrong as well. So while we do say it's better to guess, I think the penalty for omitting it entirely is more severe. So I obviously don't have the specific, it's all part of the algorithm of the scoring algorithm, but yeah, certainly getting an answer correct is to your benefit, of course.
Yeah. And make sure you complete the test. Make
Yes,
sure that
and
you don't
complete the
skip any.
test. Yep,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah. All right. Okay, I think, so Poonam, I understand your question that certain universities have waived off the GMAT requirement. That is an evaluation that you'll need to do. Being an ex-admission officer, let me take this up. I've run admissions for the Schulich School of Business, which is part of York University in Toronto, Canada. Some schools do waive off, some don't need the test at all, but you need to evaluate each of those institutions on their own merits and see which are the good ones, which are not. A lot of the good institutions do usually require the GMAT. Some good ones do waive it off, but you need to evaluate each one individually. Okay. Okay, so I think this is an interesting question. This is from Ahmed, who's asking what is the best way to prepare for the GMAT? Online classes or offline classes? And which class is the best? So I know, Arun, you were offline earlier, now you're completely online. Amit, I know Jamboree offers online and offline both. Do you have any guidance on that? Which works best? What have you seen work best for your students?
Arun sir, go ahead, please. After you.
Yeah, I think, the way I look at it is, in some sense, the medium that you choose to study, whether it's offline or online, is also in some sense a kind of a commitment mechanism, if you ask me, right? So what you see is something that has very low touch, where you are able to have a flexible schedule. You can do it in 2 to 3 weeks. All the content is in front of you. Sure, you can do it in 2 to 3 weeks if that's the kind of mode you have. But if you are someone who says, I want to focus, I want to make sure that I get to a particular goal, and for that, in that journey, I may need human intervention. Because eventually, if you look at it, that is the difference. More than offline, online, it is whether you require human intervention. Are you okay interacting with an app or interacting with just a video course, or do you want someone who can help you in assessing where you are going wrong and how you can proceed on that? So that's the basic bifurcation that I would suggest people can look at.
Yeah, I would say a person, just adding on to what Tarun sir has pointed out, it depends upon an individual to individual. Now, some people have a busy schedule. In that case, frankly, a person needs to, before evaluating, as an instructor, I can say we teach the same thing in online model as well as an offline model. What matters to a student is a person needs to understand where a person will learn better. Now, there are pros and cons of both. Online gives you more flexibility. You don't need to travel. All those things are taken care of. But if a person, I've also come across some people say are like old school like me who will say, yeah, I need a physical person. So I think it's a very subjective. It depends upon person to person. You need to check your schedule, and they need to check, each individual for themselves need to check whether they can give that commitment or not. If they can give that commitment, okay, whether it's offline or online, it should be on a consistent commitment for 2 to 3 months, whatever time they have. So if they can devote that much time, that's the reason they should decide whether online or offline. As an instructor, I can say in both the models, the service quality, the what we teach is the same. I'm sure if we do the same, everyone does the same. So what model they choose, I'll leave it to them. It's the convenience over discipline. Some people are self-disciplined. In that case, it slightly alters. Some people want to be told physically by instructor. That's a different deal. And apart from that, it's an interaction. It's about individuals. So from our part, it's the same as a.
Great. So I know we are running significantly over time. We had actually budgeted 1 hour for this session, but I think the session has been so engaging that 250 plus people, 265 people are still in the room and going on with the Q&A. I know all of you are hard pressed for time as well. So to the audience, my apologies. I'll not be able to pick up many more questions from here. But I quickly want to request all 3 of them to suggest ways to get in touch with their respective teams. So Arun, if candidates have more queries, want to reach out to Crackverbal to clarify those queries, where can they reach out to you or your team? Same way, Amit, if you can also type the Jamboree email address or contact information. And Anjali, I know GMAT has a team in India as well. So any guidance on how they can reach out to the GMAT India team or the customer service helpline numbers, any guidance on that would be great.
I've given my website and also my email address in case anyone wants to write to me. So
perfect. So Arun is at arunji@crackverbal.com. The website is crackverbal.com. You'll find the information over there. For Jamboree, it's support@jamboreeeducation.com. Again, you can also refer to the Jamboree website. Jamboree has centers across the country as well. You can visit some of those or write to Amit. And for GMAT, go to mba.com. That's the official website for the GMAT test. There's a lot of content, a lot of information, a lot of resources over there. So make the most of that information as well. I know I'm leaving some questions unanswered. The majority of questions which I'm seeing are around taking the test, which is about whether you can do. So one question is whether you can use a ruled notebook or not. Some other specific profile related questions. So for any of those, do reach out to the respective panelists or their organizations. If you need more insights or some more support from Seed Global Education, which is the firm I represent, if you have any questions for us, feel free to WhatsApp us as well, and we'll be happy to help you connect with the right people. We don't help with making the applications or anything, but we can guide you to the right people for the right advice. So with that, let me wrap up the session. Thank you again to all of you for attending this session. I did see people from all across the world come into this session. So thank you for attending this session and being a patient and wonderful audience. Thank you to all 3 panelists as well. Thank you, Arun. Thank you, Amit. Thank you, Anjali, for taking out the time to do this. My apologies, we went overboard with the time over here, but I hope you found this useful, enjoyed the session. From the thank you messages, I can see that the audience really enjoyed it as well. Thank you again for doing this.
Thank you.
It was a privilege.
Great. Have a good evening, all of you, and have a good day, Anjali. Take care. Bye-bye.